Joining us here at Sports Illustrated on the pin down is the legend himself, Kurt Angle. He's a WWE Hall of Famer, an Olympic gold medalist, and of course, a Pittsburgh native. Kurt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Kent.
Yeah, it's a big week in the world of wrestling, whether that be old school wrestling, pro wrestling, the Mark Kerr Rock story. The Smashing Machine is out as of today, and you have a unique aspect because you were able to work with both of these guys in their careers, and we had an SI feature that just dropped, and your name came up on both levels. So I'm going to start with what Mark Kerr said about you. He said you were extremely difficult to wrestle against because of your speed. So go into detail. What about Mark Kerr made him tough to go up against, and why was your speed such an asset?
Well, Mark was my biggest nemesis. It was really hard to like the guy because he kept beating me. And same with Mark Coleman, who's also in that movie, Smash Machine. Those two guys were my biggest enemies when I was wrestling. And I didn't have a lot of success against them in 1993 and 94. And I realized why I didn't. Actually, I quit after 1994. I quit for about 5 months because I felt sorry for myself. I was like, I'm never going to beat these two guys, so I haven't tried. So I quit for about 5 months, and then I started watching video of me wrestling, and I realized what I was doing. I was wrestling their game. I was going toe to toe with them and trying to not create action, but just a game of chess back and forth. You know, him attack me, I attack him, and what I realized is if I set the tone in the match and I pick up the pace, I'll get them tired a lot quicker. So I did something called exhaust training. And that's when you train till you're exhausted, and that's when the training actually begins. It's almost a form of torture. I learned this from the University of Iowa head wrestling coach Dan Gable. He taught his wrestlers this. So I started doing that training, and it allowed me to pick up the pace to go into another gear that nobody else was able to hold up against me. So this new gear made me a much better wrestler and much more effective. And I wasn't playing chess with those big, strong guys anymore. I was creating the action, and I was getting them tired. And it worked extremely well because in 1995, I won the World Championships. And in 1996, I won the Olympic gold medal. So, but those two guys I have the utmost respect for. It's crazy that I was able to turn it around and beat them because I'd never thought in a million years after 1994 that I'd ever beat them, and I did.
And that kind of summarizes your entire life story, figuring things out, being able to work through adversity. And then The Rock, on the other hand, when your name got brought up, he said you were one of his most favorite wrestlers to go up against in the ring because of your athleticism. And he loved going up against great athletes like yourself and Brock Lesnar. So I have to ask you this. When you were in the ring with other wrestlers, what did you like? What was your kind of go-to in terms of going up against a certain style?
I loved technical wrestlers. Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho. The technical wrestlers, Undertaker was a great technical wrestler, Stone Cold Steve Austin. There were a lot of great ones. Now, The Rock, he could be technical, but he was more of an action-packed kind of guy. And I loved working with him because his pace was unbelievable. And that's what I like is a high-paced match. But no, I like technical style matches the most. And I have to say my best matches were with Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero.
I'd also throw Shawn Michaels in there as well.
Shawn overall, I consider Shawn the greatest ever in the sport. If you're talking look and promo skills and wrestling ability, everything wrapped into one, that guy is perhaps the best of all time.
Now, Jim Ross mentioned that you picked up the art of pro wrestling, the sport of pro wrestling, however you want to define it, about as easy and quick as he ever saw anybody do it. How did you become such a fast learner in that world?
I didn't have a choice. When I started, I only trained for 7 months before they invited me on TV. I still didn't know what I was doing. And I remember Vince McMahon wanted to start me on TV, and he called me up from Memphis to TV, to Raw, and he says, listen, tonight you're going to make your debut. You're going to cut a promo and have a wrestling match. I said, Vince, I can't cut promos. I only did one promo in Memphis and it was horrible. See, we didn't have OVW or NXT back then, so we had no way of preparing for TV. And Vince McMahon said to me, listen, I'm going to give you an opportunity. You're either going to sink or swim. It's up to you. So he starts telling me the promo, what he wants me to say. He didn't write it down, which is what they do. He wanted me to hear it one time from him and go out there and copy it. And he starts telling me the promo, and 3 minutes goes by, and I'm like, holy crap, this is a long promo. And I stopped listening. And 6 minutes goes by, and he goes, all right, I want you to go out there and cut that promo. And I said, Vince, I'm sorry, but I didn't hear a word you said. Could you repeat it? So he repeated it one more time, and I went out there, and I got about 80% of it right. He said, you know what, I can work with this kid. This kid has ability. So he starts having me cut promos every week, and week after week, I'm getting better and better, and they're getting longer and longer. And I started mastering promos. As far as my wrestling was concerned, at this point in time, when I started on TV, I didn't even know psychology yet. I was still learning psychology. And so what my opponents had to do for me is they had to structure the whole entire match for me before the match started and call the whole entire match in the ring to me so I wouldn't forget any spots. I did this for about a year, but I became such a good listener, a good follower, that I then became a good leader. And I started structuring matches, and I started leading matches. So within 2 years in the business, I became the best in the business. And it happened that quickly. And the only way I could tell you is because I forgot everything I ever learned about amateur, and I focused solely on pro wrestling. See, the difference between amateur and pro is in amateur wrestling, you're taught to show no emotion. You go out there with a poker face on, you get the job done. Pro wrestling, you have to show every emotion because that's what the fans invest in. And amateur wrestling, you're taught to take your opponent down, turn them and pin them as quickly as you can, get the match over with as fast as possible. In pro wrestling, you have to slow down, tell a story. Good guy versus bad guy. Bad guy gets the heat on the good guy. The good guy makes a comeback. The bad guy either cheats and wins, or the good guy overcomes the cheating and wins. So I had to learn that. And I still didn't know it, but after that year of my opponents walking me through the matches, I started picking up on it. So I would say the reason why I picked up on the business quicker than anybody in the history is because I got thrown out there and I was told you either sink or swim.
Yeah, and then when you look at the world of pro wrestling, there's not just the in-ring ability, as you said. It's that performance. It's that art of acting. And then you look at The Rock, he transitioned into a good actor. Batista, yes, and then yourself, you were in the movie Warrior. You played Koba, the villain at the end of the movie. Yeah. And so now my question to you will be, what about the Kurt Angle story? Are we eventually going to see something on the big screen? Because you have about as compelling a story as anybody.
Yeah, you know what? We are working on that movie. I have the directors, Ian and Esham Nelms. They're brothers. They were former wrestlers in high school and college, so they understand my sport. We've been talking to each other. We're almost done with the script. We already got the investors, so we're in a good position right now. But we're not gonna. We're going to make sure the script's perfected before we do anything, before we pick the cast and everything like that. So we're taking our time, and knowing that Smashing Machine just came out, it might be a good time to breathe a little bit and let that movie digest, and then, continue on. But, the crazy thing is, ironically, Mark Kerr and I are doing a movie, and, we wrestled each other, for the Olympic team, and it's just really ironic that his story's coming out close to mine.
Who would be one pro wrestler that you wish you had a match with? Let's just say hypothetically, it could be you in your prime where there's no limits on what you can do in the ring. Somebody that you never got to wrestle that you would love to just have that signature last match with.
Bret Hart. I would have loved to wrestle Bret. He, when I talk about technical matches, he has some of the best. And he's my kind of style. That's my kind of guy that I like to work with. And I think Bret and I would have had a 5-star incredible match.
Yeah, the Hitman, as good as it gets. You mentioned Shawn Michaels. Of course, you guys had that signature match. I want to turn to a personal note because I'm a Pittsburgh native as well. Yeah. And after the 96 Olympics, you made a tour where you went to different schools. You gave motivational speeches. You came to my elementary school. You were at Westinghouse Elementary in Wilmerding. And my twin brother was lucky to ask you a question at the time where he said to you, he said, do you ever see yourself in the WWF, now known as the WWE?
I
And
said no, right?
you absolutely said no. But here's what I want to say is, looking back at things, how happy are you that A, you had that first journey, but B, you had that second journey where you eventually said yes?
Yeah, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I never thought in a million years I'd be in WWE. And what happened was, long story short, is when I was approached by WWE in 1996, and I did that speech after I was approached by WWE. So they approached me. They invited me up to headquarters. Vince McMahon met with me. He threw a multi-million-dollar deal in front of my face. And I never saw money like that, or money in general, to be honest. And I said, Vince, can I take it home and think about it? He said, yeah, take it home, think about it. If you decide to sign it, send it back. So I went home and I talked to my brothers. And they said, you're not doing that crap. You're the real deal. That's fake. They were saying, listen, you're an Olympic gold medalist. You're legit. That is not real. That is predetermined's a better word for it. So my coaches said the same thing. They said, you're not doing that. So I turned it down. But ironically, 2 years later, the WWE comes out of the closet and says, we're no longer sport. We're sports entertainment. Basically de-legitimizing wrestling, saying that wrestling is fake, predetermined, the better word for it. So I called the WWE in 1998 because my brother said, you could do it now. They admitted that they're fake. Go ahead, do it now. So I was like, what the heck, I'll call them. So I called the WWE and asked if that contract still stood, and they said, no, but you can come up and try out. And I figured nothing in my life's ever come easy. This one year, I'll go up and work for it. So I went up and tried out, and the rest is history.
In terms of advice you would give young wrestlers new to the business, or maybe ones that just made the main roster but are still trying to figure it out, what would be the top piece of advice you would give those wrestlers?
Work ethic is everything. That's what got me all my championships. Is outworking people, working hard. That's the most important thing that I always preach to people when I say in my speeches. To believe in yourself and have incredible work ethic. Because work ethic, if you have the incredible work ethic, you're always going to be successful. And it doesn't mean you're always going to win, but you will have a lot of success if you can do that.
Let's go to a couple rapid fire questions here, just quick social media type stuff as we close. You know the game start, bench, cut. You got to keep one. You got to put one on your bench, and then you got to cut one. I'm going to throw some names out there. We're talking about the Smashing Machine earlier. Start, bench, cut. Mark Kerr, The Rock, or Stone Cold Steve Austin.
And what are we talking about?
Who would you start? Who would you bench? And who would you have to get rid of those three? Mark Kerr, The Rock, or Stone Cold?
Oh, my God. I would start Mark Kerr. Because that guy's a beast. Oh, God. I have to get rid of one of them? Oh, man, you're really putting it on me, man. This is tough. You're talking about the two biggest stars in the business, and I'm going to cut one of them?
You have to cut one. Make the tough choice.
You know what? Since Stone Cold Steve Austin blew me up in Fresno, I'm going to cut Stone Cold. And The Rock I will keep.
All because of that night in Fresno. How about this? Who was your favorite wrestler to ride with when you road tripped, you went town to town? Which wrestler was always the guy you wanted to be in that car with?
We had a blast. Edge and Christian. Those two I rode it with probably for the first 3 or 4 years of my career. And then when Brock came in, Brock and I were driving with each other quite a bit. So those were my traveling partners, and I really enjoyed being with them.
And then lastly, we always talk about finishing moves and kind of how you came up with yours. Tell us about the ankle lock and why that ended up being your finisher that was so successful.
Well, Vince McMahon came to me and said, listen, you're a shooter. We need to have something more legitimate, something that people can submit to. And, I thought, you know what? I love Kenny Shamrock's ankle lock. So I asked Kenny if I could use it. And he said, yeah, without a doubt, go ahead. So I started using that. And Vince McMahon wanted me to be more legitimate because of my Olympic gold medal. And he wanted me to have like a submission move. So that was the perfect one for me. And I was able to even make it even better because I was able to add different trade-off submissions. When I would wrestle against Undertaker, he gave me a chokehold and I put it back into an ankle lock, or Chris Benoit, the Crippler crossface, and I exchanged it to an ankle lock. So I was able to trade off and make that move even more, pretty cool. And I just really innovated with my mind on how I wanted to use those submission trade-offs. But it was because Vince McMahon wanted me to have a more legitimate move.
And then lastly, going back to The Rock, he's, the star of all stars. What's your best Dwayne Johnson, The Rock story that you have?
I can't remember anything. Brock and I had such a blast. The cool thing about him, and I don't have any stories, but the cool thing about him is he was really giving. I was an Olympic gold medalist. It wasn't like I was a nobody coming into WWE, but when you go in there and you go in there with an ego, you're going to get in trouble very quickly. So I never had that ego, and I always felt that these stars that I was going to wrestle, like The Rock and Stone Cold, I put them at a higher level above me. But Dwayne always brought me up to that level and said, "Hey, you're with us. You're up here with us. You're not down there with the rest. You're up here with us." So he was always very generous with the way he wrestled. He allowed, he was my first world championship match where I won the world championships. He didn't have to say yes, but he did. So I'm just very grateful. I think The Rock has done so much for my career, and I'm so grateful that he's in the movie Smashing Machine, that he played Mark Kerr. It kind of it's all like all coming back. Like it's going full circle. And I think that's really cool that he's playing my biggest nemesis, Mark Kerr.
Thank you so much, Kurt Angle, for joining us here on Sports Illustrated's The Pin Down. Again, wrestling legend, WWE Hall of Famer, Olympic gold medalist, and as I said, selfishly, I have to get in once again, Pittsburgh native. Kurt Angle, thank you so much.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.